It's the middle of November, and throughout the Golden Gate Estates, the holiday lights are being strung and it's beginning to look festive. But it also means it's time for my Golden Gate Estates market update. This channel focuses on everything to do with living in Southwest Florida. If you're thinking about buying, selling, or just have questions about real estate, whether it's here in the Golden Gate States or anywhere else in Southwest Florida, call or text me at 239-450-5786 or click the link below to schedule a free, no obligation, informational Zoom call. Well, I'm not sure how it's happened, but we already are back at another market update. It's the middle of November. This month is already flying. This year has gone by like a rocket ship. Today, I'm going to give you an update on the activity of the Golden Gate Estates for the month of October in my November 2025 market update. Let's get started. Now, as we begin to take a look at this month's update, just a quick reminder, as I do each and every month for my market updates, I'm providing you with the raw data directly taken out of the Southwest Florida MLS system. No filters unless I tell you, because I want you to have the raw information and, of course, my opinions so that you can formulate what's best for you and your family's real estate goals in the rest of 2025 and 2026. Now, it's hard to believe that we're even talking about 2026, but we are. And it feels like just yesterday that we were talking about whether 2025 was going to be any better than 2024. Well, the reality is that it hasn't been a great year, but it also hasn't been a horrible year for the Golden Gate Estates. Yes, parts of Southwest Florida are still adjusting and still recovering, but for the Golden Gate Estates, it seems pretty much like we're getting back to a more normal market. Let's begin. As we do with most months, we're going to start with the pricing, looking at the closed median price of $580,000. That is up 3.1% year over year and is up where we were last month, which is good news. The average price, again, it's up 3.7% year over year to $688,000. And don't forget those $8. Again, this is trending. When we look back at the median and we look at the average, we see that we are well above. We are well above where we were pre-COVID. And that's a good sign because, everywhere on the internet for the last, it seems like almost 2 years now, that you've been hearing that we're about to crash, that the Southwest Florida market is going to tumble back to, 2008, 2009 type numbers. Listen, that's just not going to happen because when we look at our pricing, one, we see that we're still trending way above where we were in 2019, 2020, even 2021, and most of 2022. But we aren't seeing the drastic price adjustments. Now, could something happen to the economy? Could something happen in the world that could cause another price adjustment? Of course. But the reality is that price is fairly stable. And when we look at, the average price or average percent of the list price. So what this means, is that when an offer was made, that's the price that we're considering. So average price or average percent, of the last list price is 95.5%. So we're seeing that in 2025, that we're seeing that sellers are definitely negotiating their pricing. Now, is that dropping the numbers greatly? No, but I think there's a lot of sellers that realize that there's not a ton of buyers. So they are negotiating to make a deal when they have a buyer that's interested, opposed to other years, particularly in 23 and 24, when they were still really feeling like we were supposed to stay in that pricing and they were fighting to stay there. Now, how does that compare to other years? So when I bought my house in October of 2014, the average percent of last list price was 97.4%. In October 2019, which I often compare pre-COVID, we were at 90.2%. So yes, we are definitely seeing sellers negotiating more for their asking price. Historically, always sellers have tried to get more for their house than typically the market is saying. It's just part of the real estate game, in my opinion. And realtors need to, at times, help their sellers realize that what they see their property's worth is not what the market or what the buyers are really seeing their property's worth. So we see price adjustments to try to find where the buyers really want to be at for this house. And that's really what this market has been. A lot of price adjustments because sellers are competing over the few buyers that are in the market, and we see price adjustment. Now, this is not reflected in these numbers. We are not looking at percent of close price versus where they originally listed at. We're just looking at where was it compared to when where was the offer compared to the asking price at the time of the offer. Again, we're not seeing sellers giving away their properties, but we certainly are seeing that it's a negotiable market. Now let's look at inventory and activity. So new listings, we saw 98 new listings. That's plus 8.9% year over year. That's a good sign. Homes for sale, 381. That's down 5.2%. That's a great sign because that means that we are seeing homes selling and the inventory is not gaining. We are actually maintaining or actually losing inventory year over year and month over month. Months of supply, which is exactly what I'm talking about, 6.2 months worth of supply. So months of supply or inventory, how many months it would take to sell out all of the homes that are currently on the market if no future home hits the market. So typically we say anything over 6 months is a buyer's market. We're at 6.2 months. So technically by definition, it's a buyer's market. But it's more of a neutral market because again, as I've been saying, really from even when we were in these numbers here, the buyers didn't have a ton of advantage. Now, who of the buyers have an advantage right now? Well, it's the buyers that are willing to take a risk on the interest rates. Now, we have seen some dip in activity over the last couple months because we're starting to see the news of the Fed adjusting interest rates and lots of news about falling interest rates. And I think to some degree, buyers are saying, oh, wait, push pause. Let's see what the rates continue to do. We had seen earlier this year that buyers were starting to get used to the fact that the interest rates were where they were. But now with rates starting to fall or adjust a little bit, we're seeing some buyers saying, okay, let me push pause, still plenty of inventory. Let me take a look and see what the trends of the interest rates are so that I don't get locked into an interest rate that's too high. Well, the reality is, as we always say, you date the rate, marry the house. So right now, the buyers that are willing to jump into the market at the current interest rates have the advantage. There's not a whole lot of competition in the market and plenty of sellers that want to negotiate. Pending sales, we saw 53 homes go under contract in the month of October. That's up 32.5% year over year. That's a great sign. Love that. And when we look at the trends, we're going to look at this chart a little bit in more depth in a minute. But you can see how October is still down for this year, but we are seeing again, this is the trend that we see. This year we saw a good amount of activity pick up sporadically in the spring, and then we have seen it kind of dip down. And again, as the economy is starting to adjust and there's more confidence, we're starting to see a bit more activity. And I think as we go into the winter months, we're going to see even more activity and interest rates stabilize and continue to go down. I think, we're going to be okay, Golden Gate Estates. Total sales closings, 63. That's up 43.2% year over year. That's a great sign. Now, let's look at how this compares to pendings, because this is really what I look at. How many of the pendings are going to closing? And keep in mind that most closings have a pending period of 30 to 60 days in the Golden Gate Estates. It's kind of average. Very rarely do we see a house close in 2 weeks. It does happen, typically cash buyers, new construction. And every so often, you'll see a closing go farther out than 60 days. Not as common, particularly, but in this market where sellers are willing to wait for a closing, they'll do it because they want the contract. So we look at a 30 to 60 day period when we look at the numbers, and we kind of bring in here November of 2024 and December 2024 numbers, compare them to then the total sales for January, February. We starting to see the trends here. We're starting to see that a good number of contracts in the Golden Gate Estates do go to closing. That's super encouraging for you if you're a seller and you're thinking about whether you want to sell. The vast majority of the contracts in the Golden Gate Estates do go to closing. Yes, are there some that cancel because of inspection items or failed finance contingencies or various reasons? Yes, they do. But the vast majority are going to closing. Now, I didn't calculate a percentage or anything like that. Just the visual eye check says we are doing very well in the Golden Gate States when it comes to contracts to completion. And that obviously is always the goal of when we write a contract on a house, is to get it to the finish line. Doesn't always happen, as I said, but for the most part in the Golden Gate States, we're trending in a good way. So we watch those pending numbers. Okay, October is 53. I would expect November, December closing numbers to be down a little bit, not spiking up, because we see, again, this was a drop here and here. July we saw a drop to 47. There's the drop. There's our two drops, and now we're trending back up. So again, very stable activity, consistent activity. It's a good sign for you if you are a homeowner here in the Golden Gate Estates. Days on the market, the median is 66. Average, and this is the only time, like in pricing, I tend to look more at median. On days on market, I tend to look more at average. 93 is still what I consider and tell most of my sellers to consider is, anywhere from, well, that's 66 to 90 days on the market is going to be about the time that we expect. Now, a home priced correctly, obviously, and nicely updated and a desirable part of the Golden Gate Estates is going to sell very quickly. But if we are adjusting pricing or it needs some work or things like that, the house is going to take a little bit longer to sell. And that's where my Sell It Stress-Free system comes in. It walks you through the journey of selling your home from this point where you start thinking about selling all the way to the closing table. And now I'm excited to tell you that I have now had the ability to offer you 4 or more instant cash offers. So visit my website, sellitstressfree.com, and learn more. And of course, if you want to schedule a information call via Zoom, or you just want to call or text me, that's great. Click the link below and we'll schedule a time to talk and just see whether this is the right market for you to sell in. Again, if you bought your house at the peak of 2022, 2023, there are definitely sellers that are making it out of their homes from that time frame, but they are certainly not cashing in. But if you need to sell, obviously it's time to have the conversation. But if you bought your home in 2019 or before, 2020 and before, and you want to upgrade or downsize, give me a call, and it's absolutely time to think about putting your house on the market. So, as well as sellers, I love working with buyers. If you're thinking about buying a home here in the Golden Gate States or really anywhere else in Southwest Florida, call or text me today at 239-450-5786. Again, as each and every month, I appreciate you joining me on these market update videos. If you found this information helpful, like the video, subscribe to my channel, and hit the bell to be notified about my future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.